NFL training camp season has begun. Which teams in the NFL really need a good training camp? We're going to dive into that and more on a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Let's roll.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. I am one of your hosts, Tyler Rowland, here with my co-host, Alex Clancy. Ladies and gentlemen, do you smell that? It smells like football. Training camps have kicked off for most teams around the NFL. We're going to dive into which NFL teams really need to have a good training camp. Also, the show on Netflix, Quarterback, has been a big success. But what three quarterbacks would we want to be on the show next year? And then finally, the return of Alex's mystery segment. Very excited to dive into all that. Before we do, thank you guys for making the Locked On NFL podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, NFL content all year long on all platforms and always for free. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed to the Locked On NFL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Shout out to our everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Tomorrow, you're going to get your boy Q and Chris Carter breaking down all the biggest news from around the NFL, training camps, and all that. Make sure that you don't miss it. But Alex, it is time to dive into this Thursday show. And the question is, which NFL teams really need a good training camp to kick off this season? And I'll do you a little bit of a favor here. I am going to go first because I got some specific.
How is that doing me a favor?
Mind. You know, you get to take a nice big drink of that tea or that coffee or that whiskey.
I'm like
whatever
Ted
it
Lasso when it
to
comes
be.
to tea. No tea for me. Anyways, go ahead.
Right. But the number one team, I'll do one of my teams here. But the number one team for me is the Buffalo Bills. And we've been talking about the Bills throughout the offseason. Is this like the last year of the Bills as we know it? Could there be significant change to the Bills after this season? Everybody's playing nice now. Stephon Diggs is happy, and Josh Allen's a better leader because of it, and they want to retire Buffalo Bills and all that. But all it would take is another playoff loss, a disappointing playoff loss. I think this thing could go off the rails. So with the bad mojo of getting beat at home by the Bengals, coming in with some drama throughout this offseason, feeling the pressure of the last few years and not really meeting expectation, I think that the Buffalo Bills need a great training camp, because if they have a rocky training camp, if they have a rough training camp, I think it can continue those negative feelings that have been around the Bills for about 6 to 8 months, and I think it would be a detriment to them going into the season. So the Buffalo Bills are the team that I think really needs to have a good training camp.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I said that a year ago, something's wrong in Buffalo. Stephon Diggs is not happy. Stephon Diggs he won't go Antonio Brown the way Antonio Brown went Antonio Brown. I'm not directly correlating the two.
Right.
He got 0 or 1 targets in the first half of one of the biggest games of the year last year.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a wrap. Like, for me, the game I remember with Buffalo, Mac Jones, 3 pass attempts, and Buffalo lost. That's a differentiation. There are certain juggernaut games that Buffalo just doesn't win. They haven't won. And that's something that differentiates the greats from the truly elite, depending on if it's a regular season game or otherwise. So you just ruined my mystery segment, because my mystery segment was going to be, is Stephon Diggs a Buffalo Bill in 2024? I do have one in backup, but it's funny you say that, because we've been on this since day one, before it even actually became a thing. Something's wrong in Buffalo, so you're right. I think that it's very necessary for them. Now, I have a trifecta, okay? It's very different because they're not necessarily Super Bowl contenders, but they're at the precipice of something either great or not so great. All 3 of these teams, the Dallas Cowboys, no Zeke. This is another year with Dak. Tony Pollard coming off injury, being RB1. Is it going to be him? Is it going to be the guy they drafted? Is it going to be somebody else to take the place of Ezekiel Elliott between the tackles? That's one, because it's the Cowboys. But it's interesting with Philly making the Super Bowl, Dallas needs to be perfect.
Yeah.
They need to be perfect, and it starts in training camp. That's one. Number two is Minnesota, and I'm assuming you have them on your short
Great
list
answer.
because
Great
Minnesota
answer. Yeah.
is now the prohibitive favorite or should be to win that division. They've never been that. So even last year with Aaron Rodgers there, the roster wasn't there with Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson being hurt early in the year.
Right.
It was like, can Minnesota win? But now Detroit, Chicago on the rise. We don't know what Jordan Love is going to be. Now there's actual, expectations. And you know what Kirk Cousins isn't great at? Doing things when there are things expected of him. So
Right.
that's the second one. I think the easy one that you can take over after this is the Jets, because it's the Jets and it's Aaron Rodgers. I think you can do a throw in for any team, anything about any team that's on the rise. You just throw the Jets in. So that's my honorable mention.
No, I think those are all great answers. And honestly, Minnesota was on my short list, but my number 2 answer is the Baltimore Ravens.
Oh,
The Ravens, Lamar Jackson was hurt all year last year. Everything's hunky-dory now because the contract got signed, but things were ugly at times. People taking sides on social media, protecting themselves, defending themselves, all of that. So there had to be some feathers ruffled there within the locker room with other players and Lamar himself, plus all the injuries last year. All of those injuries for the Baltimore Ravens, they got to get past that. They need to not have major injuries in camp. Lamar needs to be on the same page with his new wide receivers. A guy like Odell Beckham Jr. is in. They need that to look well. They got a new offensive coordinator. The Ravens need good mojo on offense with Lamar and his new pieces and his new offense so that they can reclaim that division from Cincinnati after it was taken away from them by the Bengals. So I think the Ravens, the Giants were another team that were that came to mind with. I'm sure there are players in that locker room that think that Saquon Barkley is more important to the team than Daniel Jones. And they could have, really upset some people in the locker room with the way that they've treated Saquon Barkley and then the money that they gave to Daniel Jones. That money is what upsets guys in locker rooms. That is what does it. Hey, this guy's getting paid more than me. This guy got this much money over this guy. But that stuff does drive a wedge in a locker room. So the Giants were a team that I wanted to at least toss in there for a moment. But you mentioned Minnesota, and I think you're 100% right. Kirk Cousins has a ton of pressure on him, and he hasn't really lived up to it when the lights are the brightest. I think that could be because he takes every Tuesday off, even during the season, doesn't do anything football related. That's a mini rant that we don't have time for, but we learned that because of Netflix show Quarterback. And speaking of quarterback, what 3 quarterbacks would you want to see on next year's edition of that show? We're going to talk about that in just a moment. Before we get into it, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you with players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So with draft prep underway for the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. If you're looking to make a smooth turn in your fantasy football snake drafts with the last pick in the first round and the first pick in the second round, you can catch an initial spark for your roster by revving up with 2 elite NFC East wide receivers, the Dallas Cowboys CeeDee Lamb and the Philadelphia Eagles A.J. Brown. A letter-perfect guaranteed early fit. Count on Lamb driving Dak Prescott and Dallas offense to big numbers in the passing game, and Brown revving up Jalen Hurts downfield throwing often again in Philadelphia. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. It's the same with your vehicle. With eBay's Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories, you can make sure that your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, tail lights, alternators, shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it. And they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the first time. So go forth, switch gears, Crank the AC. Say goodbye to sweating it if your ride needs a little fixing up, because now you'll know that you'll be set up for success from the get-go with eBay Guaranteed Fit. Everything for your vehicle is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, Alex, let's continue this Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. We talked about some teams that need a good training camp, but now I want to transition to the 3 quarterbacks we would like to see on Netflix's quarterback show next year. Alex, I've been talking for 5 minutes straight. Who are some quarterbacks that you would like to see on next year's show? We're looking at a quarterback that's at the top of the league, like Mahomes, a quarterback that's in the middle of the league, like Cousins, and then maybe a quarterback that's at the bottom of the league, like Marcus Mariota. Do your best, of course, but work in that framework. It'd be make it a little interesting.
Yeah, there's one guy I'm going to say last that I'm riveted by because it's kind of rudimentary as to how he got to where he got and how well he performed right out the gate. One is the poster child of quiet leader who everybody loves. I'm going to say Tua first. And it's interesting because
he did
Tua
say
in
no.
Miami.
I saw it today. He said no, but I would love to see him as well. I get it.
Yeah, this is a wish list. I say
yes,
Tua
sure.
One because he's in Miami. It's that complete juxtaposition of a guy. He doesn't belong really in Miami with that vibe and everything. He's a quiet dude. He's always led by example. He's just, got a great head on his shoulders, good person, everything like that. Okay, so that's one for me. 2, Joe Burrow over Josh Allen. Joe Burrow's not boring. Josh Allen seems to be a sweetheart, but kind of boring. I could have put Justin Herbert there. Justin Herbert's boring, even though they're smart. Like, this is a TV show. For me, I said those two to get to this. I want to see Brock Purdy. And I want to see Brock Purdy because what the hell is Brock Purdy? We don't know what he is yet. Like, 49ers fans want to crown him and put him next to Joe Montana and get him a bust and put him next to Joe Montana. Let's chill the hell out. But what he's done up until this point, regardless of what scheme he's been in, regardless of how excellent his coach is in framing and building a framework around a maybe, B- C+ quarterback, he's used to that. Coming in Trey Lance's stead and just playing football when everybody else was hurt.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. 4-year quarterback, at Iowa State. It's just his stories and his outlook on the NFL is different than maybe any other quarterback we've ever seen ever, because he wasn't undrafted. He was the last person drafted. It's completely different.
Yeah. Mr. Irrelevant. I agree. And not only would watch it, Brock Purdy would be interesting, like you're saying, because we get to see what separates it, what has allowed him to go from Mr. Irrelevant to the starting quarterback in an NFC championship game, and not somebody who you feel like doesn't deserve to be there. I mean, he looked like he was handling the offense well. What does he do behind the scenes that allowed him to be able to make that jump and to do that? Because we haven't really seen that before. I mean, Tom Brady's 6th round. I don't want to get ahead of myself and all that, but I'm just saying it's a crazy story, and it allows us to be a fly on the wall inside San Francisco's quarterback room, which is incredibly interesting to watch, which we talked about just last week as well. So I am with you there. So I also am with you with Joe Burrow. If you're looking at a top quarterback in the league, I think Joe Burrow or Jalen Hurts would be the two options. Josh Allen may be interesting, but just because he plays for the Bills and like their fan base and getting an idea of what it's like to be in Buffalo during the season, that would be cool. But I'm with you. I think my top tier option is definitely Joe Burrow. My middle tier option is Mac Jones. Okay.
Why?
And here's why. Because I think Mac Jones is like a spoiled brat in the store who isn't getting the toys that he wants. I think New England has an absolutely terrible situation for a quarterback right now with the coaching staff, with the personnel that they have, with what Mac Jones went through last year with Matt Patricia as an offensive. I just think Mac Jones is in one of the worst situations ever. Like, not ever, but like in the NFL right now. I don't think the Patriots organization right now is set up to support a young quarterback. I don't think that's what Bill Belichick wants to do. And you hear the reports that, Bill Belichick isn't a huge fan of Mac Jones, doesn't even want to say his name half the time. But at the same time, the ownership group really loves Mac Jones and really supports him and puts him out there. So I think there's a divide there between what the organization thinks of Mac Jones and what the coaching staff thinks of Mac Jones and what Mac Jones thinks of Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones thinks he's a stud. So basically what I'm saying is I think we would get some fireworks of Mac Jones throwing tantrums and Mac Jones throwing a fit. I think when Mac Jones is driving home from practice one day, he'll go nuts about how terrible the coaching is and how he's not being supported. I think he would throw a temper tantrum on one of these episodes and really skewer the Patriots organization. And what that would do to Bill Belichick, what that would do to that organization, I can't help it. It's a train wreck that I want to watch. So Mac Jones was my middle answer, but my low end guy, look, I'm a sucker for 80s movies, just dude vibes movies. And Gardner Minshew, it would be like watching that every single week. Not only is he going against, Gardner Minshew's taking all the first team reps right now in early training camp practices, as he should. I think watching Gardner Minshew hold off the rookie, just be an absolute swag monster at all times. Right. Yeah. I said it. I can't believe it, but it came out. I'm just feeling the vibes. watching Gardner Minshew on this show and just his day-to-day life, how he ticks as a person, I think it would be incredibly, incredibly humorous. So Joe Burrow, Mac Jones, and Gardner Minshew were my three.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I think there was one that needs to be mentioned is Trevor Lawrence. We don't really know a lot about his personality yet. He was a guy that I would have said in the middle. But I think Tua is fascinating. I just think his injuries when he plays, he's super efficient. Like he's Greg Maddux as a quarterback when he's efficient. It's just the wild. He doesn't do anything with lightning speed at all. Doesn't throw the ball super fast. He can locate that two-seamer like Greg Maddux could. And have the changeup in the dirt and the splitter. Trevor Lawrence, not yet, because he hasn't really arrived yet. They won a playoff game against a bad team. Whatever it was, the defense really carried the weight there in the playoffs. He didn't play well, but we'll see. Yeah, but all in all, I think it's a great segment. I think it's a great exercise. But really, Joe Burrow, I think, would be the elite one that we both want to see. It's just because he's done this already. He had the cigar still in LSU, and he always has the right thing to say to make people smile, like that son of a gun. And then he's actually good at football, which is a perfect combination. Alex Clancy, Tyler Rowland, Locked On NFL Thursday. Follow him on Twitter at Tic Tac Titans. Check him out Monday through Friday, free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube for all your Tennessee Titans news. Same for me with the Arizona Cardinals. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. It's my mystery segment. We're going to do that. We haven't done it. We're going to do it. We haven't. Now we will. Next.
It's time.
Locked On NFL Thursday. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Tyler Rowland, Locked On Titans. This is our third season going in. Super, super stoked to be, the foyer into the auditorium that is Chris Carter and your boy Q on Fridays. Mystery segment time. So Tyler ruined my initial mystery segment idea. I always have two. My first one was going to be is Stephon Diggs going to be a Buffalo Bill come 2024? I was even going to say come trade deadline of 2023, because that is a ticking time bomb in Buffalo. If they don't make the AFC Championship game this year, I can see Sean McDermott getting fired. I can see Stephon Diggs wanting out. I can see a lot of things. And it's like, well, no, why would that happen? Sean McDermott has been great. Sean McDermott has been great from what they experienced before him. It's kind of like Monty Williams with the Suns. I know I throw weird basketball metaphors or comparisons sometimes. Monty Williams in Phoenix elevated that franchise, and then he couldn't elevate it anymore, so they had to move on from him. It's kind of the same thing with Sean McDermott. It's Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. Even though he won a Super Bowl, it's a little bit different, and Pittsburgh has had 3 head coaches in the last 50 years, so it's a little bit different there. But my mystery segment that I've decided to use is, speaking of Tua, if you look at the Miami Dolphins roster, 1 to 53 on game day, or 1 to 22 starters wise, do they have the best 1 to 22 roster in football? For those that listened last year, Tyler and I did this exercise, and I said it was Los Angeles Chargers.
Right.
That starters, 1 to 22, had the best roster in football. Did Miami take over by adding Jalen Ramsey, by shoring up the interior of the defensive line and their front seven looking the way that it does now?
Well, I got to tell you, my initial answer, gun to my head, is no. I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles. That would be my answer if I had to choose. But you make an absolutely great point. I mean, Miami has added some on the offensive line now. They've made some additions there. Teron Armstead is going to be big. I mean, I think starting on PUP, but expect him to be there. They added Devon A-Chain in the backfield, who I'm a big fan of. Add Robbie Anderson, which is more depth. Add Braxton Berrios, which is more depth. And really, I think for Miami, adding Jalen Ramsey, obviously the biggest addition of the offseason, but they traded for Bradley Chubb last year. And maybe he had a good year, but now he's had a full offseason with that team. They add David Long Jr. at linebacker, who I know who played at Tennessee, went healthy. David Long is a tackling machine if you can keep guys off him. Now they have a really good defensive line. Jalen Phillips is coming into his own. So
right.
You have Phillips and you have Bradley Chubb and you have Christian Wilkins up front on the defensive line with Holland and Ramsey and Howard in the back end. I mean, I think you've identified a good conversation. I think the offensive line and maybe the off-ball linebacker group could be better. But, I mean, generally speaking, from top to bottom, they have to have a top 5 set of starters on offense and defense, probably top 3, honestly, if we want to dive in. And I know this isn't the roster, but they added Vic Fangio as their defensive coordinator after having that offense last year. I think Fangio's tutelage is enough to take those players on defense to another level where we're a little, I guess, less certain about the Dolphins than we are on the offensive side of the ball. So for me, I think you're onto something here. Miami has an absolutely fantastic roster. Looking at it now, too, from top to bottom, it's pretty incredible what they've been able to do.
Yeah, and, last year it was like, can the offense outscore people? Because Xavier Howard fell off a cliff after he got paid. The interior defensive line was good, but not as good as they thought it was going to be. It was Raheem Mostert. It was Chase Edmonds for 10 minutes. It was, it was a bunch of running backs. And then, Jeff Wilson Jr., was he over there? Oh, that's right, because they traded. Yeah, that's right. Yep. But then, you look at Jalen Waddle getting drafted where he did by Miami was kind of like, really? Because he was great at Alabama, okay? But it wasn't the same as, it just wasn't the same as Devontae Smith. He was never the number one guy, things like that. Jameson Williams, whoever it was, if that defense caught up to the offense, nobody expected Tyreek Hill just to come in and do what he did last year. They're like, he took the money crazy, or they wanted him out or whatever it was. With Tua, what he did last year when he played was well above what anybody expected. I mean, maybe 65% was expected. Yeah. Jalen Waddle becoming the home run threat, whether it be from a wide receiver screen or a slant or a deep ball down the sideline. He does everything. He does everything Tyreek Hill does. And they're both not big. And they both work. And they're both over 120 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns in a game at times. And then the defense catches up. That's something that especially team with the AFC East that is up for grabs the way that it is. People say it's Buffalo. I'm not sure that that's the case. New England is New England, but I'm telling you what, man, Miami, if you told me Miami made the AFC Championship game against Kansas City, I wouldn't be surprised 0.1%. And that's kind of why I want to do this exercise as we go into training camp, because people don't realize, holy, Bradley Chubb and Jalen Ramsey, they made all these moves and then drafted well. And then this is where Christian Wilkins, they've drafted excellently over the last handful of years.
Yeah. I think they've been able to stock the roster, and they've added some guys in free agency to help their depth on the offensive line. And I really like what Miami's done. And I agree with you. I don't think it would be nuts to see them make a conference championship run, but we're going to watch that unfold. All we know is we're taking step 1 today. Training camps have begun. It's another step closer towards the season. Can't wait to dive into all of it with you guys. But that is going to do it for us today on a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed for daily NFL content all year on all apps and always for free. It's Thursday, but as I always say, start your weekend early, folks, and stay safe out there.
Bye.